Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Father Christian Sova, Director of the Chapel for Europe, and you are most welcome to the chapel tonight, in person or virtually via YouTube streaming. So, welcome to the Chapel for Europe. This multicultural space in the midst of the European institutions, ecumenical from the very beginning, and now more and more interreligious. A space for prayer, but also a space for reflection and a dialogue on important European issues. And you know how important the culture of dialogue is in the society of today. In these weeks, the chapel celebrates the 20th anniversary in the service of not only European civil servants. By the way, after the conference, you can just visit our exhibition at the ground floor. Unfortunately, there will not be a reception because of the COVID rules, but just stay and enjoy this exhibition about the 20 years of the chapel and all its activities. Those who join us online are most welcome to see it presentially in the nearest future. And back to our event. We are very happy in this very special anniversary time to welcome you in the evening, Our Hope for Europe, Conference on Future of Europe, jointly organized with CEC, Conference of European Churches, and COMECE, Commission of the Bishops, Conference of the European Union. And, well, you know, looking to the past, as Robert Schuman said, there was much more to the creation of the European Union that's only a technical and economical project. And looking to the future, on the occasion of this conference on the future of Europe being currently held, despite all the challenges, there is much hope. And exactly about this hope, our distinguished guests will be sharing about tonight. So I invite Mr. Stefan Lunte, the policy advisor of COMECE, to set the scene, and I wish you a very inspiring evening.
Thank you, Father Christian, for welcoming us here. Mrs. Vice President, Honorable Member of the European Parliament, Secretaries General, dear participants in the dialogue event. The Conference on the Future of Europe is a complex adventure. It has a complicated structure. We have a co-presidency, an executive board with more than 20 members and observers. There is a huge plenary with 324 members and another 60 observers. We also have, as an important entry point, the interactive multilingual platform, where everybody can share and discuss ideas and register events. As an example, tonight's discussion is also accessible through the platform. Finally, there are the 4 citizen panels with 200 randomly selected citizens of Europe. They are, these panels, exciting new forms of participatory democracy at the European level. A first report of panel 1 on the economy, social justice, education, culture, youth and sport, and digital transformation has been published recently, and we are waiting for the complete range of proposals of all 4 panels. They are expected for January, hopefully, and it is foreseeable that the conference itself will gain additional steam and public interest at that point, and steadily increase until the publication of the intermediate report under the French presidency. Speculations about the outcome of the conference will run high. especially since the partners in the new German traffic light coalition, expressed their wish that the Conference on the Future of Europe might lead us into a new convention with the stated goal to revise the treaties. As we all know, such a step would require unanimity in the Council and therefore remains quite improbable. But who knows? However, discussing all the time the outcome of the conference may distract us from a more essential point, which is to give all European citizens the opportunity to talk about Europe's challenges and priorities, including the values we want to promote. Therefore, instead of using the word conference, it might have been better to call it conversations on the future of Europe. To some, this might sound too light and not stringent enough. But for me, we are touching here a key issue for our European democracy. Une conversation, ein Gespräch, a talk, at best in a cafe, or why not as tonight in a chapel, are an indispensable preparation for bringing and for preparing democratic, formal, and binding procedures. Freely exchanging views and confronting diverging opinions provide a form of legitimacy to democracy that ideally complements the one that comes out of the ballot boxes. Perhaps it is this informal provision of legitimacy that the European Union lacks most today. In the small French town where I live, you will be very lucky to attend a conversation on Europe that goes beyond decrying Bruxelles. It will be the same in many other places on our continent, and it is a pity. And it is therefore that the Conference on the Future of Europe is such an important exercise. It allows for, it provokes conversations about the European Union. This is what we also want to do tonight. And in order to stimulate our debate, let me share a few ideas. In fact, only one idea or one observation. I will put it this way. Over the last decades, the European Union has developed in the name of the promotion of the common good. The common good for all citizens. Our political leadership has advanced the unification of Europe through enlarging and deepening the European Union with the argument that it serves the European common good. I will certainly not dispute the good intentions of all the fathers and mothers of Europe, but like so often in human history, there are unwelcome and unforeseeable side effects of good plans. A few examples. The single market project, enshrined in the Treaty of Rome, was greatly accelerated with the Single European Act from 1987 in order to increase prosperity across the continent. And it happened, though not at all, not for all, or at least not for all in the same way. Insufficiently regulated markets and market forces today provoke a twin movement of the population from the east to the west and from the rural to urban areas. Those who remain feel left behind culturally and impoverished economically. As a matter of fact, the plan for more prosperity has contributed to greater inequality in Europe. Or take the monetary union. During the 80s and 90s of the last century, waves of competitive devaluation within the single market had led to much friction. Thus, when the euro started in 2000, it was hailed as a peace project based on mutual trust. But less than 10 years later, the euro debt crisis started. The monetary union nearly imploded, and it was saved only at a very high price, not only in financial terms, but also with the burden of renewed nationalistic resentment and prejudice among Europeans. And my last example. In 1999, the Schengen Agreement was incorporated in EU law. Citizens could freely circulate within EU territory without undergoing identity checks. What a blessing for all of us. But it also implied harmonizing visa standards and asylum procedures. It means to agree on a common migration policy. This has been impossible so far, and undeniable contributed to the current suffering at our common borders. Again, it is the sad experience that you want to promote the common good and end up in bitter conflict. This is no reason to give up. Of course not. It is natural, it is part of the human condition, but it requires to pursue the conversation with the hope to come up with new compromises and better solutions. This is my hope for Europe, that Europeans will not stop the dialogue. And this, in my view, is the intrinsic value of the Conference on the Future of Europe. Therefore, I already thank all participants. I also salute Mr. Gozi, who has arrived, and all our eminent speakers for having accepted our invitation. And now I leave the floor to you and my colleague, Lena Kumning, for our debate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stefan, for this very clear and informative and thought-provoking introduction to the team. My name is Lena Kumlin, and I work as Senior EU Policy Advisor for the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Finland and for the Conference of European Churches, CEC, and I will have the pleasure of moderating this discussion here tonight. First of all, I'd like to wish all of you warmly welcome to this, our event, Our Hope for Europe, both you who are here in the chapel and all of you who are following the discussions, or maybe we should say conversations, online. You will also have possibilities to ask questions and come with comments to our speakers. You who are following online can do that by using the chat function on YouTube. So tonight we will discuss about our hopes for Europe, our hopes, visions, dreams, and concerns, and how can we, as churches and European Christian citizens, contribute and add value to the ongoing conference on the future of Europe. What is most important maybe is that this is an ongoing exercise. You can all take part in the discussions on national and local level. You can also engage in discussions in the digital platform in your mother tongue. And we, together with COMECE, CEC, we will continue monitoring and contributing to the conference on the future of Europe. And in this work, the discussions here will be extremely important for us. I now have the pleasure of introducing our prominent speakers from the EU institutions. We are very happy indeed to have with us here today European Commission Vice President for Democracy and Demography, Dubravka Suica, Vice Chair of the Executive Board of the Conference, members of the European Parliament, Herman Scholz, you are an observer of the Executive Board and represent the left and come from Germany, and member of the European Parliament, Sandro Gozi, you come from Italy, represent Renew Europe, and are a member of the conference plenary. We will also have a video message from Gašper Dovžan, State Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Slovenia and co-chair of the Executive Board. He represents the Slovenian Presidency in the conference. First, I would give the floor to Vice President Suica. You have called the conference an unprecedented exercise for the EU, and said that this conference is all about engaging and empowering citizens. We keep them at the forefront of all our thinking on the conference. Whether they are pro-Europe or skeptical, we want to hear from them so that we can respond to their concerns. How do you assess the situation now? Are citizens being heard? Is the conference so far living up to your high expectations? And will it actually strengthen both the EU and the European democracy? Please.
First of all, good evening to all of you, and I want to thank you for inviting me here to share our views and ideas on the conference on the future of Europe. I would like to thank Father Christian for the introduction, but also to Mr. Stefan Lunte for what you were saying, because you introduced this evening very, very well from my point of view. Since I speak on behalf of the Commission and I'm one of the co-chairs, as you already said, in the Executive Board, I prepared a small intervention, so I would like to read, and later on I'm able to answer your question and your questions from the audience. First of all, I'm grateful that through your commitment, people of faith can make their voice heard in the Conference on the Future of Europe. And I appreciate that the Commission of the Bishops' Conference of European Churches, being together with Christian churches from all over Europe, including the Western Balkans, Russia and Ukraine. But I cannot speak to you today without first of all congratulating the Chapel for Europe on its 20th anniversary, which was celebrated earlier this year in September, and thank you for the invitation to look at your exhibition downstairs. The chapel provides a multicultural, ecumenical space for prayer and exchange, to have a space for reflection and dialogue, as I would say, it is more important today than ever. I recently addressed a meeting on the Article 17, Dialogue of the European Parliament, and I emphasized just how important the dialogue is for European Commission. You are important partners in this dialogue, as it was established by the Lisbon Treaty, as you already mentioned. It brings people together from different backgrounds and different traditions to discuss issues in an atmosphere of mutual respect. And this mirrors our work in the Conference on the Future of Europe, which makes you a valuable partner. Yes, the conference might be a little bit misleading title, and when you say conversation, it's better. We call it deliberation, which is a little bit different. But of course, always debate and discuss and assess where we are and where we want to go. This is the key. So the conference has citizens at the core, and it is part of our aspiration to make our democracy fit for the future in a world which is characterized by digital, by climate and by demographic transition. We cannot expect citizens to wait 4 or 5 years to express their views only in elections. Their engagement and input is also needed in the time between elections, and this is exactly what we are doing with this conference. We share the same objective, making this unprecedented conference a success for our democracy and for our citizens. I cannot imagine deliberations on the future of the European Union without full involvement of religious and non-confessional organizations, or without a discussion on how to strengthen our common founding values. Together with my colleague, Vice President Skinas, who leads this work in the European Commission, we will host a meeting with Article 17 partners on the 14th of January, dedicated to discussing your input for the conference. So this is about to come. I want to update you on the recent, because you asked me what is the state of play. So I would like to update you on the recent Executive Board meeting, which took place on Saturday this weekend at very short notice. And I want to be very clear that the health and safety of our citizens and all participants in the conference is our main priority. While we are doing our utmost to keep the conference on track, so it can carry out its mandate to the fullest extent possible, we had to take the decision to postpone the plenary which was foreseen for 17 and 18 December. This was the only responsible thing to do under the circumstances, but the work of the conference will continue. We aim to complete the cycle of European citizens panels, which you mentioned. There are 800 citizens in 4 different panels, following the rules and advice of the authorities and partners in the member states that are hosting these panels, and the final sessions of the panels in Italy, Netherlands, Poland, and Ireland. The 4 citizens panels who are deliberating or discussing on the basis of this idea bring 800 citizens, and as I said, they are very diverse, these people, aged from 16 to 85 years from all 27 member states, and the recommendations from the European and national citizens panels will be the basis for the discussions in the plenary. This is where citizens will bring we will bring citizens into the core of policy making in the European Union. What is our aim? Our aim is to show that European citizen can influence the drafting of European policy, whether he lives in the mountain or on the island, whether he is well educated or not, whether he is farmer or student. We want to show that it's not anymore Brussels bubble, but that they can influence European policy, and this is our ultimate goal. On an equal footing with their elected politicians to discuss the future of the European Union they want to live and work in. In the plenary in October, we invited also representatives from Western Balkans to include their perspective of the future of the Western Balkans. Of course, civil society organizations, they are represented by 18 representatives from European Economic and Social Committee, 5 representatives of Civil Society Convention, which is composed of more than 75 representations active at pan-European level, and it remains open for membership all along the process. And 3 representatives of the member organizations of the European Movement International. I want to stress this because you are also represented there. With the Conference on the Future of Europe, for the first time, we open a truly European public space where citizens, as I said, of all ages, all backgrounds and locations can share ideas with the citizens in, as you already said, 24 languages. Young people have a very special place in the conference, and 1/3 of the members of the European citizens panels are aged 16 to 25. They are 1/3 of citizens ambassadors to the plenary. So what are we doing? We want to prepare the future for them and together with them. And the best way is to do, we cannot, I usually say, we cannot talk about them without them. So we are preparing the future in which they are going to live. And what is very important, next year, 2022, will be the European Year of Youth. And our European Union needs the vision, needs engagement and participation of young people, of course, to build a better future. The future that is greener, that is more connected, that is more inclusive, and indeed the conference facilitates online participation. The digital platform of the conference has, at this moment, it had over 4 million visitors. Every contribution on the platform is analyzed and fed into the 2 deliberative fora, the European Citizens Panels and the plenary. And of course, we hope to see young people of faith engage more on the platform. And I want to thank you that this meeting tonight is also subscribed on the platform, which I find very important, because we live in digital era and we live in this pandemic, and this is very important. Transnational multilingual exercise in deliberative democracy is innovative, unequal in terms of scale, because you were quoting me. It will reinforce our representative democracy, and it will make it fit for the future. There is no idea of abolishing representative democracy, but we want to empower members of European Parliament, members of national parliament with this deliberative democracy, with this participative democracy. And it is not just a listening exercise. It started with a clear commitment of presidents of 3 European institutions, Parliament, Council and Commission, to follow up on these deliberations. This is the change, this is the benchmark of this conference. different from convention. So follow-up is promised. So the European dream has already delivered peace, prosperity, which you mentioned, openness, equality of rights, and a system which is based on values, but we cannot assume that this is achieved forever. Our union is being disputed and challenged both internally and externally, and wherever the rights of an individual or a community are being denied or undermined, our European dream is being damaged. And I think of it as being like when people renew their vows within the family. So too in the European Union we can regularly reassess our relationship with each other. This is what we are doing with this conference. It is legitimate to ask questions about our union, of course. We can take a moment to look back at the highs and also at the lows we have come through together, with the aim of building on the past to commit deeper to our future. And to conclude, for this in this answering to your question, as one of 3 co-chairs in the executive board of the conference, I do not and we do not want to preempt the deliberations, but I will say this: there is no going back. Through the conference, we are transforming the way we engage with all citizens. Together, we design a more inclusive future for every citizen in our European Union. And I believe it would be useful to structurally embed, this is my personal opinion, to embed citizens' deliberations and input in our policy making. And I think we will manage to do it if we work together. So you are strong defenders of the freedom of religion and the protection of religious heritage in the European Union. You promote the values on which the European Union is based, the centrality of ecology in our economic and social development, social justice, and global peace. My wish for a vibrant democracy is one where citizens of all ages and faiths can actively engage and contribute to their village, to their town, to their region, to their country, and to our union. And the Conference on the Future of Europe provides a safe, inclusive, transparent, open, and transnational public sphere or public space for in-depth deliberations in full respect of each other's views and values. So this is what is our goal in the end, and I want to thank you for your engagement, and I'm looking forward to our further collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Vice President Suica. The co-chair from the Parliament side is Gašper Dovžan in the Executive Board, and he said at the 19th of May, when the conference was launched, that we want to create real momentum from the bottom up. The conference will be much more than a listening exercise, but a way to truly include citizens in mapping out our shared European future. How do you, as members of the European Parliament, see the situation? Is the conference inclusive enough? And what are your sort of main expectations? If we start with Mr. Scholz and then Mr. Gozi, please.
Thank you. Thank you for having been invited to this, remarkable evening. And I thought before coming to be invited, our hope for Europe, into a church to discuss with you from a different angle what is our hope for Europe. And I remembered then when I was the first time here in Brussels, it was 30 years ago probably, as a then still quite young man, engaged in international policies, and I walked aside this chapel. It was a different circumstances, as I would say. The whole place was empty. The new European Parliament buildings has not yet been constructed. So why I'm describing the situation? Because we have a lot of changes in this European Union over the last 30 or 40 or 50 years. And that leads me to the question, so what is our hope for Europe, why we are dreaming about Europe, why Europe should deliver certain institutional political answers to concerns of citizens all over the 27 member states of the European Union in their daily life. So why a housewife in Romania or a peasant in Portugal or an engineer in Germany or some sportsman from Finland in the winter season should say, I have a hope into these institutions and structures. So why we are together in this European Union? And that leads me to the question that my hope is that citizens are participating in their deliberations or in their conversations, Gesprächen, talks at home or with the family or in the corporations where they are working or in the schools. So what is common with me, with another citizens in Portugal, in Estonia, in Scotland, not even more, but maybe they are coming back, in Spain and Greece, etc., in Poland. So what is our concern? What we have to decide together in a conference which is dealing with these deep roots of this integration process over the last years. And that leads me to a second idea I wanted to introduce to you. It was in 1943 when Agnero Spinelli was imprisoned at the island of Ventotene during the, I would say, most dark chapters of the human history, and he dreamed in this prison island what is necessary to overcome hate, to overcome disparities, inequalities, which leads to war, which leads to that people are shooting each other for personal or other interests. And he developed in this manifesto of Ventotene the idea we have to overcome the segregation of citizenship through borders, that we have to overcome the situation that we are looking only in our own personal or individual or in this national interest, but we have to look what is the connecting link to citizens above and outside of these national borders. So to think we have to live together in a transnational understanding. So that is, I would say, the main idea of this manifesto. And later on he became member of the commission, so he developed the issues that we need in economic interactivities, etc. So in a certain way that was also the birth hour of the internal market. And that leads me to your question. Are we already at the point today enough opening to the participation of citizens in the conference? And I would say, no, we are on the halfway. We have not yet reached out from the conference into the public awareness of our societies cross over all 27 member states, because if you go out to some marketplace, even in Brussels, and you ask a plumber if he has heard about the conference, maybe he has never heard about it. And so that is true for the reality in all the 27 member states. So the question is, the conference must be aware, with all its complicated and described structures, from the citizens panels to the plenary conferences, with the participation of organized civil society structures, organizations, that we are serving in a certain way the necessity to increase democratic understanding of the functioning of our societies. And we should stop to discuss only about democracy in the terms of how we are shaping the institutional structures. We have to find a new approach, and therefore I would say if we don't have started the conference yet, we should invent it immediately to start such a conference, because the time, the challenges are so big and so problematic in a certain way that I would say this conference must deliver. And that is the third issue I want to raise from the European Parliament, and maybe Mario will add then this idea. From the Parliament, it was from the first momentum clear we want to be one of the engines in this vehicle of the conference, so that the conference is moving, that the conference is inviting as much as possible citizens to participate. So the conference should become our project, meaning our for each citizens in the 27 member states. And if we don't reach out to all of them, we will not have enough success, because the conference must deliver in a limited time frame due to the corona crisis, to the pandemics. But that means we have to even speed up. We have to go out. We have to invite the media. We have to be interesting for the media. We know how the media issue is organized. They only comes if there is a scandal, if there is a problem, if there is some crisis. Then there is the participation of the media guaranteed. But if things are going normally, I would say it's more hard to invite them to come to be interesting. So we also should take our responsibility in the conference, and that is true for all the three institutions, Commission, Council and Parliament, for the Executive Committee, for the members of the plenary, for the members of the citizens, to go out, to report, to speak with people, to invite them to participate, to explain what we are discussing. And that is a final remark, not to be too long. I said that we should stop to speak about democracy. We should live democracy. That means we have to explain why we are failing in the European Union with a joint, and that was mentioned by Mr. Lunte, the common asylum and migration policy. Why it is not functioning? What is hindering us to deliver? So who is responsible? We have to make these processes transparent. Why we have still social injustice? Why we have a gap between the national or remaining at national level social policies? Why we have created an economic and monetary union, an internal market, which is delivering goods and services in the interest of the functioning of our market economies? But if you should be clear, then only a social market economy will deliver for citizens, to give them a hope for their future, to give young people the understanding how to access to education, how to get a job, etc. So that is a question we have to discuss within the conference, and we have to say what is good and what is not yet good in this European Union, very concrete, very precisely on the challenge and the task of the daily life. And that leads us to climate change, that leads us to mitigating the loss of biodiversity, that is a question of peace and war. And I'm at the moment, I feel not very pleased with the situation, how international policies are functioning, because we are creating new wars, we are creating new conflicts in the world. And here I think the European Union has to deliver also persuading answers for everybody of us, so to make it possible for us to be an active member of a conversation about the future Europe, which is worth to be named the Peace Nobel Prize winner, that is worth to live in solidarity with people and citizens in other regions of the world, because the EU is an economic giant, So we have an impact on the life of the citizens and people in other continents. And of course, it should be also the task of us all together to create structures which are enabling everybody to participate in shaping our future.
Thank you so much. And I will give the floor immediately to MEP Gozi for your deliberations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be back in discussing with you, with COMECE, and with the other representatives of the churches and the religious communities. And those who know me, they know that it's not by circumstances of protocolar reasons that I say this, but I think that I showed it in the last 20 years of my experience as committed Europeans in several institutions. I fully share what Vice President Suica and my colleague Helmut Scholz said. I just would like to thank you for the title of this evening. I think that our hope for Europe says a lot, and it is a very demanding commitment that you ask to each of us. And I know that you haven't chosen this word by chance, or just because it sounded good, but because you know that we need in this moment a strong hope, not only for Europe, but in general for our values and for our societies. I call this moment a Darwinian moment. Why? Because it's a moment of transformation. Our world is changing. Our world is changing through the pandemic. Our world is changing through the digital revolution that we have to put at the service of the mankind. Our world is changing around the climate change and the climate challenge. So in this moment, it is not the strongest who wins. It's the one who manage to better adapt to the changes while keeping its values and while keeping its principles. And this is why we need a strong hope. We need to be hope. It's not enough to have hope. I'm recalling Paul of Tarsus when he wrote spes contra spem. It's not in this moment of very difficult change for our societies, it's not enough that we have hope. We, each of us, especially those who are committed in the public sphere, who are committed in the public institutions, must be hope, must embody the hope that we give to our societies. And this requires courage and requires audacity. There is a former president of the United States that wrote a book about the audacity of hope. And I think that certainly to be hope and to embody hope in this moment require also to be audacious, because you have to go against stream. You have to go against streams in defending our values. What is my hope? Why I want to be, with my little contribution in the conference, a hope for our citizens? Because I think that this is the moment to fiercely defend our values and our identity. What is European identity? European identity is very simple. It is not one single religion. It is not one single culture. It is not one single language. It is European values, Article 2 of the Treaty of the European Union, rule of law, democratic principles, freedom for everybody. This is our European identity. And our values are cohesion and solidarity. I think that in the treaty, this word is mentioned more than 20 times. And it is clear that we are talking about solidarity and cohesion, but we don't embody solidarity and cohesion, as we don't embody hope. And this is a thing that is emerging in the discussion in the conference. I mean, our citizens certainly are not talking only about concrete solutions. Of course, they want concrete solutions. But if you look at the work of the citizen panel, if you look at the contribution of the young people from all over Europe which met in Strasbourg mid-October, they also require values. They want a union of values. They want a better democracy. They want stronger solidarity. These are not things which are totally detached for the citizen expectations. These are things that goes hand in hand with the need for concrete solutions. And this is my hope for the conference, to be able to let emerge from a bottom-up approach both the need for new concrete solutions, be it to fight against social inequalities, be it to better manage an environment, be it to better manage the digital world. These are the concrete solutions. But they must go hand in hand with a renewed commitment for defending and practicing our values. And we are not practicing our values. Not everywhere, and not in each occasion. And I think that we need also your help, your participation, to remind to us, first of all, not only to listen to the citizens, but then try to embody what the citizens expect. I fully share what the Holy Father said about the Mediterranean, but I could say them again, unfortunately, the same about the Channel. What we used to call Mare Nostrum. What we used to call the cradle of European civilization. What we used to call something which happened between the Capitol, the Golgotha, and the Acropole. Today is more a mare mortum than a mare nostrum. And it's a mare mortum because of selfishness, because of lack of hope, because of lack of courage. Why we allow foreign power to use women, men and child like a weapon of mass destabilization? Because we don't do what we know we should do, to have a common approach on migration and asylum policy. And I'm sure that Stefan Lunte mentioned this in his introduction, if I follow your work. But, so we allow, because of our division, because of our lack of solidarity, because of our selfishness, we allow a dictator at the border, at the current border of Europe, because Europe goes well beyond that border in terms of history and civilization. But today there is a formal border. We allow a dictator to use women, human beings, to blackmail the European. And the European can be blackmailed because they are hopelessly divided about something which should be at the core of our action. This is the kind of the debate that we have also to promote. And this is the debate on which we really count, I really count as member of the European Parliament, on your very active contribution. We have spoken several times about this, even before, with COMECE representative, even before the conference started. But we really need your active role, and this is why I'm very grateful for this invitation tonight, but we need you to be on the ground, to talk to the members of your respective communities, to participate in the platform, to launch ideas, to mobilize, because it is true that this conference also depends on the widest public participation and awareness as possible. And that things are going well, notwithstanding the pandemic and notwithstanding the difficulties, nobody is speaking about that. And this is why we need you, and we also need to continue, and will be my last 2 points. We need you because, I mean, the response to this, and nobody mentioned this in the conference so far, thanks God. The response to these challenges, be they climate challenges, be they migration challenges, cannot be to build up walls. I don't care if the walls are paid with the European money or with national money. The wars are the denial of our identity. The wars are the denial of Article 2 of the Treaty of the European Union. The wars are not an effective response since the fall of the Berlin Wall. Since 1989, 9th of November 1989. In the world, we have built up more than 60 wars. Was that a solution to manage the flow of human beings around the world? If the wars were a solution, after 60 wars around the world, we would have solved it. We would know it. This is the kind of debate that we have to promote. This is the kind of debate that we have to stimulate. And this, of course, it's also the kind of commitment that we have to take, because it will be my last point. It is clear, and I fully agree with Helmut Scholz, this is not only a listening exercise. We don't mobilize 800 people from all the 27 member states only to listen to them and then thank you very much. That was a great opinion poll. It was a real. You were there. We did an opinion poll. We know more or less your feeling, and now business as usual. I'm much more concerned about the outcome of the conference, not because I don't hope for an ambitious outcome, but because I want that ambitious outcome to be ensured follow-up. We need to ensure that we are ready to ensure a follow-up, be it with political initiative, be it with the legislative initiative, be it with treaty revision, if the request requires treaty revision. We must be ready, because from that will depend our success. We are trying to making Europe differently with this conference. If it works, we will have done something extremely important for European democracy, for European citizenship. So we have on our shoulder a very heavy responsibilities, but when I say on our shoulder, I don't look only at the European Commission, at the European Parliament, I look to each of you, because this is a collective individual and exercise. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You wanted to come in with a short comment?
Maybe we go on and then later
Okay, yes. I think we will now take the video message from State Secretary Gašper Dovžan from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Slovenia, and as said, co-chair of the Executive Board. The voice is not very strong, so I hope you here can follow it. If we could please have the video message.
Members of the European Union and of the Conference of European Churches, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to participate at today's event. From the side of the Slovenian Presidency of the Council of the EU, I extend a warm welcome to you also on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Firstly, allow me to thank the Commission of the Episcopates of the European Union and the Conference of the European Churches for a long-standing tradition of engaging in dialogue with the EU presidencies. Moreover, I would like to wholeheartedly thank you for your contribution to the European project and for your active engagement in the context of the Conference on the Future of Europe, including by organizing and co-organizing events at local, regional and national level, as well as by contributing ideas on interactive multilingual digital platforms. As you know, most of the conference activities, which officially began on May 9, 2021, on Europe Day, are taking place during the Slovenian presidency of the Council of the EU. As the country holding the presidency, Slovenia plays a part in the joint presidency of the conference and represents the EU member states within the conference's executive group. The fact is that the Conference on the Future of Europe has affiliated to COVID-19 from the very beginning. Due to the pandemic, there was a later start and there were fewer opportunities to discussions with physical presence. I hope that the resurgence of COVID-19 infections in Europe will not lead to a substantial slowdown of the planned activities. So far, the work within the conference is proceeding well, and with high awareness of all stakeholders regarding the importance of the process. I am pleased that, following discussions on procedural aspects, we have reached a stage where we can focus on the substance. All 4 citizens' panels, which are a key feature of the conference, started discussing issues related to 4 topical baskets: economy, jobs, culture, European democracy, values and rights, climate change, environment, health, and the EU in the world and migration. As the presidency, Slovenia's main goal is to ensure that citizens' interests are in the center of the conference and that their hopes and dreams, visions and concerns are heard. We will continue to highlight the need to put policies in favor of citizens first. Topics that concern the European citizens and the current substantial challenges must be at heart of discussions. We will strive that citizens' proposals will be incorporated in the deliberations of the outcome of conference in a concrete and comprehensible manner. I am glad to emphasize that young people play a vital role within the conference. 1/3 of each citizens panel is composed of people that are younger than 25. They are the ones that help lead the debate on the future of Europe. When talking about the future of Europe, we find it also very important that we managed to include the Western Balkans representatives in one of the conference's plenary. Their inclusion in the debate as key stakeholders is important as we share the same future responsibilities. Of course, we are still in the middle of the process, so it's not the time to predict or prescribe the outcomes. Nevertheless, messages that come from the side of the citizens, their expectations and their worries are clear. They wish to make sure that our future is greener, more sustainable and more resilient. They are committed to work towards a more prosperous, socially just, inclusive and peaceful union. Ladies and gentlemen, Slovenia believes that we need a strong and effective European Union, a European Union that will be a global leader in the transition to sustainable, climate-neutral and digitally supported development. We need an EU we identify with. We need an EU that will be able to respond effectively to major challenges we face today, such as health challenges, pandemics, climate change, securing global food and other supplies, the migration crisis, cyber threats, digitalization, etc. In this respect, strengthening the resilience of the European Union, especially in light of possible future pandemics, cyber and other hybrid threats, is one of our main goals. The EU must become more resilient to cope with unpredicted situations and better prepared for any kind of possible future crisis. Our wish is to accelerate the green and digital transition, to create jobs, strengthen the resilience of our societies, labor markets, for all generations and ensure the health of our environment. We must also strive to make sure that these transitions are socially fair and inclusive. While conference on the future of Europe is one of 4 priorities of the Slovenian presidency, and the main overarching priority being resilience, one of the priorities is also strengthening the European values and principles, as well as promoting the European way of life, the rule of law, and equal criteria for all. European democracy, values, rights, the rule of law are the foundation of the European Union. We are aware that the Union is more than Europe, more than a single market. It is above all a peace project based on common European values. European Union is a community of values. The common values such as the respect for personal dignity, freedom and fundamental rights, democracy, equality, the rule of law, as well as the respect for rules and the fulfillment of obligations are the glue that keeps the EU together. We must assure that these values are continued to be translated into concrete EU policies, also through the process of the Conference on the Future of Europe. In conclusion, Slovenia's presidency will continue to strive for an inclusive and open debate within the conference. allowing all citizens and stakeholders to join and express their views. I am glad to inform you that the co-chairs of the Executive Board have in principle reached an agreement to invite other stakeholders to one of the next plenary sessions. A list of organizations which could be potentially invited, including European churches, is being prepared for the co-chairs' consideration. However, we can't exclude that the evolving epidemiological situation and the new virus mutation, which is a matter of grave concern, will negatively affect the planned activities, including the December plenary meeting, thus putting the participation of key stakeholders into question. In the end, I would like to assure you that the Executive Board will thoroughly assess the constructive proposals when preparing the final report of the conference. Let me thank you again for your active participation in the conference on the future of Europe, with special focus on strengthening our common European values and promoting the common good. It demonstrates that we all here share the same goal, shaping a better future for Europe and promoting our core values. I wish you a successful event. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I hope the representative from the Slovenian permanent representation also will convey our thanks to Gašper Dovžan. As we are running a little late to our schedule, I would ask you now very briefly to reflect on the role of churches and religious communities. As you heard, Mr. Dovžan mentioned the significant role of churches and also the possibility of more concrete interaction with the conference plenary, thus contributing to the conference. How do you see the added value and potential role of churches in this respect, and what would be your wish towards us as churches? And if you can squeeze this in to like one sentence, it would be really great. That Gozi, and then Vice President and Mr. Scholz.
In one sentence.
Very briefly, because I already said what I hope from churches and religious communities in this conference, so I won't repeat it. I just want to stress that I think that what we have done together so far and what we have to continue together must continue. So I think that there is a specificity in the dialogue with the church and religious communities around Article 17 of the Treaty on the Function of the European Union. You know, then on a previous life I directly worked on that article, first with the white paper on the European governance of the Prodi Commission of 2001, then in the work that I did with you for the Constitutional Treaty, and then ended up with the Lisbon Treaty. So I mean, we have worked together on that. I think that that must continue to be a very specific and original and important feature of the dialogue between the institution and the church and the religious communities, and that got its own specificity that we should keep. So I hope that the importance of what we did will be appreciated also in the context of the citizen participation in the conference, and that we will be able to continue along the line without putting into question a pillar of our dialogue to which I attach the utmost importance, and that I think is very much needed for the European institution and for a certain vision of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. I already addressed this issue. I think that your role, the role of religious communities, is indispensable in these deliberations on the future of Europe. And of course, I also mentioned Article 17, and it is very important. We will continue, as I mentioned, with the Vice President Skinas on 14th of January, and looking forward to it definitely. But what I want to say is that we badly need your help here, because my dear colleague mentioned, Mr. Scholz mentioned promotion. we need better promotion of this conference. For us, this evening is also very, very important, because we want to penetrate in all parts of our society, as I said earlier, and we want the more people are on board, the better will the conclusions be. And this is for us very important, because, as I said, Brussels bubble should be burst, and we have to show that they, citizens, can influence not only during elections but also during this period of 4 or 5 years. Why? Because the world has been changing. Everything, as you said, the technology has been changed. So we have to adapt to this. And in a minute, in a second, you have nowadays every citizen has possibility to be informed. So we have to come closer to them. We have to come directly to our citizens, to inform them, to talk to them, and to listen to them, to see what are their daily issues. If I may say, at this moment, it's not 1 minute, but sorry, the interim results of our multilingual digital platform, we thought, because we are in the middle of the pandemic, that the health will be first ranked on this among all these topics. But you won't believe, but maybe you will. Climate change and environment is first at the moment, and second is European democracy, which means that European citizens are interested in the state of European democracy. Of course, it is also a daily issue. So this is what they want to talk with us about, and this is what we want to offer them to talk. So I don't want to say that this is it is too early to draw the conclusions. It's only interim report, but it shows the direction. So let us see what will the final goal be. But we have, and what is the most important, the responsibility is not, as you said, you're from Parliament, mine from Commission, Gašper Dovžan from the Council, or French Presidency, which will come, but all of us. So the ownership of the conference is from all of us. Each and every citizen is owner of this conference, and also the responsibility. So if we fail, I don't think we will, it won't be our failure, but we offered this unprecedented exercise to, there is no democracy in the world which ever offered something similar. Nobody was this courageous to put citizens in the hemicycle of Strasbourg together with elected representative governments, with members of European Commission. Nobody ever dared to do this. The European Union dared, and we, by signing joint declaration, Ursula von der Leyen, President Sassoli, and at that time Portuguese presidency, but later on presidency, French presidency in the end, they committed to deliver on citizens' ideas, on citizens' concerns, and on citizens' hopes. And this is what we have to do. And this is a very important moment, maybe, of this conference now, because we are now in full swing, and this is something which is very important. And thank you for organizing this. Thank you for being on board, and I hope that we can engage you even more than we did until now. But as I said, everything is open, everything is inclusive and transparent, and this is what we want to achieve. Citizens at the heart, and this is, I think I can't agree more with my colleagues and with Dovžan. We are in full agreement. It would be nice if we were in full agreement in some other issues like migration and asylum policy, but the final word is always bearing in mind what are the competencies of the Union and what is Lisbon Treaty, what is within Member States' competence, what is within our competence. So this might be changed after this conference, and we may talk about the period of pre-conference and period after this conference if we succeed. So it depends on internal elections, on internal policy situation in the member states. So where some issues are stuck, they are stuck in the Council, not in the Commission, not in the Parliament. This is because I don't want to blame Council, but just to tell you. No, I don't want to blame, but I want to tell you and citizens and those who are following us that you know what is the problem. The problem is not here. The problem is in few member states, not to name them. I don't want to name anyone, but just to tell you, it's not. I don't want European Union, but it's not. We have to be together. So, but internal systems of different member states are the most important. So, also voters have to bear in mind whom they elect in their member states, and then everything could be better. Sorry for this, but I think this was important to say. Sorry.
And Mr. Scholz, your
I have not so much to add to these right words, but maybe because Vice President just spoke about the transparency, and I think transparency has to be guaranteed during the whole process of the conference, and that is, of course, our responsibility in a certain way. But I hope that the churches, and you have asked me for the role of the churches, will keep a close look on that what we are delivering, because the trust of citizens into the conference and what policy of different levels, etc., are speaking about should be taken seriously. Otherwise, we are creating distrust, and we are creating non-democratic co-living of citizens within the member states as between member states. So the role of the church should be also to really to take care about that, and that is more than only promotion. That is question that you are also transponding the idea of the conference to the citizens and say, listen to the politicians, ask the politicians, demand the politicians, and deliver what you want from them, because that is a chance, the small chance of a window of opportunity which has just opened, but maybe it is closing soon. Nobody knows. The question is that we should use this open window of opportunity for really listening to citizens and to say to them, please, don't trust only, but also to ask and demand that the policy is dealing with your daily problems at the European Union and the national and the municipal levels. And that, I think, is the issue of the conference. And here the churches, from my point of view, can play a great role, and so that is also a request from me to you, that you are a partner for us in providing this conference to make it a success.
Thank you so much. We will now enlarge the debate and invite some European Christian citizens, and we will start with another video clip. We have spoken a lot about involving youth, the real future of Europe, but we think it's also important to listen to the elderly and the so-called grandparents of Europe. And we will now hear a senior EU citizen, Mary Killoran from Ireland, and she will share her thoughts about the situation in rural Europe and about war, conflicts, and the importance of EU as a peace project. Could we have the video clip, please?
Good morning. Good morning. From the most westerly part of the European Union, village of Ross's in County Sligo. Next stop, across the ocean, America. I worked for 30 years in the European Parliament. And during that time, I witnessed some momentous occasions in the Parliament. First of those, 1979, when Simone Veil, survivor of the Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen concentration camps, was elected president of the Parliament. 1988, Pope John Paul II visited. At that time, totalitarian regimes around Europe were crumbling. And he expressed the hope that Europe would soon breathe with two lungs, one from the east, the other from the west. Now to my views on the future of Europe. My first concern is for young people. Jobs, education. On the education side, there is no doubt that every child should have the same opportunities. I recall indeed Jacques Delors, former President of the Commission, was addressing religious leaders in Brussels a number of years ago, expressing his concern at the situation in France, where at the time, in some of the banlieues,
In 10 minutes.
he said there were little prospects for a lot of young children who came home with no parent in the home. We know them as what we call here latchkey children. The European Union has certainly contributed handsomely to education through funding of universities, and particularly in Ireland, at third level, what were known as institutes of technology. There is a lot more that can be done. On jobs. Good jobs are essential. I'm concerned that with the advance of information, of artificial intelligence, a large number of jobs may in fact disappear. And I do hope that there is dialogue and discussion at the centre on that topic. Jobs confer human dignity on a person. Provide the foundation for family life and commitment in the community. We are living in a very interesting time with digital technology. I would be concerned that some young people may not be engaging with political organisations in their respective countries and forming views based on opinions they see on social media. We saw the effect of that in the US a number of years ago, where democracy can be thwarted. The recent pandemic has shown the resilience of young and old. Older people have also demonstrated a tremendous resilience and ability to manage new technology. It has been the lifeline for so many. We're isolating, particularly people on their own, far away from family. My hope is that in the Europe of the future, there will be adequate opportunities to train older people, either through term groups or whatever, in the ever-evolving technologies that lie ahead for us. Health issues, of course, are always a concern to the elderly. First of all, most people like, I think, to remain in their homes for as long as they can. For some, it may not be possible.
Okay, thank you. And could I now invite Robert Ince, Bishop in Europe, to take the floor, and then I know that you will have to, both of you will have to leave in a while. If you would like to come and sit here.
Yeah, thank you.
Bishop Robert, Bishop in Europe for the Church of England, represent a diocese with members in 40 European countries, including non-EU member states. What do you think we could and should learn about the British Brexit experience? And are there some interesting initiatives, such as the Faith in Europe initiative, that you would like briefly to tell about? And what is your hope for Europe?
Lena, thank you, and thank you very much for inviting me. I've lived in Brussels for 16 years. I'm a citizen of Belgium and of the United Kingdom. And I remember 16 years ago, this place was just getting going. And it's been such a delight to see how it's flourished and thrived, especially under Christian's leadership these last years. So it's very good to be here for this event. I support the ideas of the conference on the future of Europe. They seem to me to carry forward the notions that Robert Schuman and Jacques Delors had for establishing a soul for Europe, that Europe should not just be a technocratic market, but it should be a real community. And the conference has the possibility of engaging much more people in the European project. And I think this is vital, because if we look at Brexit and the reasons for Brexit, at least one of the reasons was a disconnect between the so-called metropolitan elites and those who were left behind, those who felt no stake in the central structures of the European Union, who understood little or nothing about how Europe worked. And so, if the Conference for Europe succeeds in engaging with ordinary people, that will be a big ask, and it has a lot to do that, but if it can do that, it will have done something of real significance. So Brexit provides a warning about what happens if you don't connect with ordinary people. I want to say a little bit, though, a bit more positively about an organisation called Faith in Europe, which brings together pro-European thinkers and Christians in Britain and Ireland. They have conducted their own conference on the future of Europe. They've had seminars and meetings and issued papers, and they've come up with a number of priorities which I share. The first, their top priority, and it's been mentioned several times tonight, is climate change. And here, Europe needs to move from aspiration to action. There's a huge disappointment around with COP26 and its failure actually to produce binding targets. And so we look to Europe to be a leader in resisting climate change and resisting the degradation of the environment. The second priority is migration. And here we need to acknowledge that Europe has failed. Pope Francis spoke eloquently this week about migration as the shipwreck of European civilization. And I think he was right. And we're seeing that in the Channel between England and Europe. And so there needs to be serious dialogue between the European institutions and England if we're not going to see more and more people dying in the Channel. And this is outrageous. So those are the top two priorities for Faith in Europe. I want to say as a religious leader that sometimes the EU gives the appearance of having a difficulty with religion. It inherits historic Christianity with values and traditions, and I'd love to see it being more comfortable and at ease with owning that history and recognizing it, not being embarrassed about it, and at the same time facing outwards to a plural society and engaging seriously with different religious traditions. Because if it doesn't engage, it risks religions, and some religions, falling prey to extreme organizations. So there's a challenge to the EU in engagement with religion. And then lastly and finally, for the last 10 years since I've been coming to this place, people have been talking about the need for a new narrative for Europe. And it's now more urgent than ever. And I think that new narrative could start from recognizing that the challenges that were faced in the 1950s in Europe of imperialism, of militarism, of rebuilding. Those are not the same challenges today. There are new challenges, and they are challenges of climate crisis, of migration, of economics. And recognizing that change and responding to the new challenges could provide the basis for a new narrative, the title of which could be something like Planning for a Sustainable Future Together. I think that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As I understand that the Vice President and also Ms. Gozi will need to leave shortly, I would ask you for a last word. What is your hope for the future of Europe?
I'm in a very difficult position because I told we don't want to preempt any conclusions because then we will influence the citizens. But of course, as I said, these were only interim reports on which I was talking about. I think that elections in 2019, European elections, showed that there was a pretty high turnout to these elections, and then we realized that citizens want to have their say, and our reply to them wanting their say is the organizing of this conference on the future of Europe, as I already said. So I think we somehow reacted. We saw what's going on with Brexit, of course. This is this was also one of triggers. We have to be honest and admit it. But as I said, living in completely new circumstances, in new developments, in digital world, we have to adapt ourselves to new reality. And this adaptation is, in fact, listening to citizens and trying to reply to their needs as soon as possible, not to wait. This is what we already said this evening here. So I think that it is important to react promptly. It is important to take their problems, their concerns, their hopes, their dreams into consideration while drafting conclusions. You know that these three institutions which I mentioned earlier, we can't vote. We work in executive board on consensual basis, which means we cannot outvote. So we have to come to the conclusion in the end, and this is definitely very important. Why it is, someone may ask later on, why this short period for deliberations? First of all, a pandemic, and we couldn't start. Little by little we started. Now we are in full swing, as I said. We will finish somewhere in May during French presidency with listening, but our work does not stop there, because if you remember 5 scenarios of Jean-Claude Juncker, White Book. It was very nice exercise. I was at that time member of European Parliament. We were debating and debating. 27 prime ministers visited European Parliament in Strasbourg. We were talking, and then it was end of mandate. This time we need another half of our mandate, which is 2.5 years from next spring, in order to act accordingly, in order to deliver, in order to reply to citizens' ideas and to their concerns. And in the end, as you said, to come from action, from talks to action, aspirations to actions, and to put it simpler, to walk the talk in the end, because otherwise we are not anymore. We won't be trusted anymore, and this us politicians and institutions, of course. And this is what we are trying to do. I cannot say more than this at this moment, because we have to listen and see what will be the final outcome. And then, as I said, they signed, 3 of them signed joint declaration, and they oblige themselves to deliver on this. And this is, for me, very important. And me, as part of the executive board and as co-chair, I will have to act in accordance with this. There is no other way out. And this is the reason why we need all of you on board, because if institutions are only there, we are there. We have parliamentarians, you have your hemicycle, I have my college of commissioners, national parliaments have parliaments, everybody has forum, only citizens don't have their forum, and their forum is this conference on the future of Europe. These are not only words, but we really think this sincerely and honestly, and this is how I see this conference personally, but also Commission, which I represent at this point. Thank you for your patience to listen to us, but our communication won't stop here we will definitely have to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. I got very little to add, but my hope is that this conference help to give to the public opinion and to our citizens a little bit more of hope and faith in the European Union and in Europe. And I hope that we can use this exercise for many reasons, many solutions, but we have already been talked about that. But I really hope that we can use this exercise to persuade the public opinion and the citizens that democracy is worthwhile. Because in this moment there is a message which is very dangerous for democracy and is very dangerous for Europe. Because after all, the message is why do we need all this complexity? I mean, these institutions, the representative of the Parliament, of the Council and the European Commission, and why there are totalitarian regimes, there are authoritarian regimes which are much simpler, and after all they work much better. So what do we need all this stuff? This is something which is going around in our societies. If we manage to use this conference also to restore faith and to restore understanding of complexity and acceptance of complexity, because democracy is a complex exercise. Because listening to everybody is a complex exercise. Because working about majority and minority while respecting the minority is a complex exercise. It is simpler when there is one person who decides or one party that decides for everybody. But it's not the right way to build up our society. If we manage to use the conference to let, on one side, to simplify the European Union, to make it deliver, to make it more efficient, but on the other side, to let understand that, after all, a part of complexity is inherent to our democracy. And to respect the values, the principles, and the diversity, we need a certain degree of complexity. And this is why Europe can appear sometimes cumbersome and complex, because Europe is the expression of the will of living together, different cultures, different people, different countries, and this is something that we have to cherish, not to throw it away. And this, I think, that would be a great result if we manage to convey this message together with many concrete solutions. But this is not my last hope. The hope with which I leave you tonight, thanking you again for your invitation, and be sure that we will continue to work together in the next weeks and months.
Thank
you.
Thank you so much to both of you, and rest assured that we will continue with our commitment and constructive collaboration. Thank you. We will now have our last video clip for this evening. It's by a young Polish woman, Agnieszka Zarzinska, who shares her views about youth within the scope of the Conference on the Future of Europe.
Hello, my name is Gašper Dovžan. I'm from Poland. I work for Caritas Europa as youth officer here. I coordinate the Europa movement. I have one big hope for Europe that is very connected to my work, and this hope is to take young people seriously. And this is a hope that I wish that they have in three dimensions. First one is the labor market. We still think that young people just need to enter the labor market. Any job varies because they just want to have a job. But we tend to forget that they need work that have a good enough salary, that respects their dignity, that gives them opportunity to develop and learn new skills. And I hope that in the European Union we will keep fighting for good circumstances for young people to enter the job market. It is still a big problem in Poland and in European countries. And we are doing a lot, but I think still that we need to remember that it's not just about getting any job, making sure this job answers our dignity. The second dimension is the dimension of the pandemic. Of course, people who are at risk are those who are elderly and have conditions, but we tend to forget that some people also pay huge price to help us cope with this crisis. During at the age where they need to get out of home, meet new people, learn the world, but they cannot do that, and we are not thinking how to support them in that sense. So I hope that in the future we will remember about young people who are paying the price, who are contributing to our efforts to cope with the crisis we are facing. And the last dimension is very close to my heart because of my work, so it is youth engagement. And I wish that we will start treating young people as experts in activism, in campaigning, in designing our future. I think we start to acknowledge that young people are experts in the sense of climate change because it is about their future. But I hope that we'll recognize their expertise and their importance of their voice also in other dimensions. This is what we try to do in Caritas Europa, where we want to recognize the role of young people, the role they play in our mission. And I hope that their voice, their needs, their perspective will be heard and it will be important also on the agenda of the European Union. I know it already is, but I hope there will be enough time, enough funds, good enough tools to listen to young people, to create for them spaces to speak. So I would be also very keen to hear from the speakers what is their take on these three dimensions. So for the future of Europe that takes young people seriously. Thank you.
And then I would ask Renato Cursi and Father Emilianos to join us up here on the stage.
Shall we take the chair next to you?
Please.
Always a pleasure.
Renato Cursi, you are Executive Secretary of Don Bosco International. You are also actively involved in the Civil Society Convention on the Future of Europe and the European Sunday Alliance. And you have participated in the COMECE Youth Convention. Could you tell us a bit more about this fascinating initiative and pick out the main key points and very briefly share your views about are young people listened to enough within the scope of the conference?
Thank you very much for this invitation and for this question. I hope that you can hear well. Yes, just to give you some context of this Catholic Youth Convention. Now we are at the end of 2021, and 3 years ago, you may recall that Pope Francis invited all the Catholic Church into a global participatory process called the Synod on Youth. And then, a few months later, Don Bosco International proposed to COMECE, why don't we reflect together on what we can do to get our young people from our networks more involved as agents of change, not just recipients of policies, agents of change in the European Union. And after this discussion, in April 2019, we launched with COMECE this Catholic Youth Platform as a space for young people from our networks and communities to share experience, to be provided with opportunities to interact with EU decision makers and to create new partnerships. So based on this experience, when the Conference on the Future of Europe was launched, COMECE organized this Catholic Youth Convention, which consisted of 3 online workshops, because in June 2021 it was not possible yet to meet in physical presence, but over 100 young people from Catholic networks and communities, they met online and they interacted, and at the end of these 3 workshops they were able to draft and vote recommendations. The 3 workshops were about just social recovery, ecological and digital transitions, and the last one was on democracy and European values. And you can find this recommendation in the final report, which is online, and all those recommendations have been uploaded on the COFOE digital platform, okay? So they are available and you can vote them if you like. And I cannot go into the details of all those recommendations, but I just want to say this, that the very last ones you will find in the report are the recommendations of young people on democracy, media and disinformation. Why I am saying this? Why? Because as many of you, we listen to very committed people today, as all of you, I think, I'm struggling to raise awareness about the European Union, this process, participatory process, the achievements of European Union, what young people can do and can obtain from the opportunities the EU is providing. I have also written a booklet in Italian for groups of young people as a tool to work on this participatory process. But in spite of all of this, last week I was forced to realize that on the one hand, only a few people I know in Italy know about the Conference on the Future of Europe and are asking me or my colleagues what they can do to participate and so on. And on the other hand, almost all of them, they read in the news that European Union is preventing the use of the word Christmas in communication. You know what I mean. Yeah, you know what I mean, the news that were last year. We can talk about the role of anti-EU propaganda, nationalist propaganda, populism, and the role of media, okay? But what is sure, I think, is that a pan-European democracy needs a more transparent media, a more correct information, and also a truly inclusive communication as well, of course. But we can reflect also on our role as representatives of institutions or civil society. And when we come to the question we have today, what is our hope for Europe? Okay, we have a responsibility, and if I can share my hope for Europe, I would say that in 2 words, I hope for Europe being a place where we, as peoples of Europe, in 2 words, we care. We care about life on this planet, our common home. We care about the human person, each human person, just because he or she is a human and has an intangible dignity as such. We, as Europe, as a place where every person can seek for meaning in life, where we are looking at difference as a value, not as something to be removed. Europe is a place where we seek justice, which is more than just equity or equality. Europe is a place where technology is at the service of human dignity and not vice versa. Because well-being is not a goal per se. It's more about providing the conditions for everyone to fulfill their own vocation. This is a goal for the peoples of Europe, I think. And I also hope that Europe is going to be a place exporting peace builders, not weapons. A place welcoming those who seek protection and attracting those who want to make a better world. And yet, today, for young people, as Agnieszka said just before me, for many young people, the reality is different from this hope and this dream, because youth unemployment rates are worse than those of the working age population as a total in all member states. Poverty is disproportionately a youth issue, and when you are migrant children, you are protected to a certain extent until you reach 18, but then you just become a young person with migrant background and you lose most of the protection you had. And many young people, they have to move, to migrate from their place to another area in Europe or to a different country to find opportunities, and they are forced to do that because of lack of opportunities. And creating new families in all these scenarios is very difficult, it's challenging. So thinking about what Don Bosco said at the end of his life in 1884, he said it is not enough to love young people. They must know that they are loved. So if we translate this into our reality today, if we want young people to care about Europe and to dream about the future of Europe, first, they must know that we care about them. Okay. And I had a final question for our guests, especially from the first panel. And my question would be, what was your dream of Europe when you were 20? And how is the reality today? What is the difference? And if there is something lacking from your dream at 20, what is lacking and what is the most urgent thing to do to get there? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now I will immediately pass the floor to Father Emilianos. You are moderator of CROCEU, the Committee of the Representatives of the Orthodox Churches to the EU. Having listened to the speakers here tonight, what are your reflections from an Orthodox perspective, your visions and dreams? What do you think is the most important task of the ongoing conference, and what could be a specific contribution from an Orthodox perspective?
Thank you so much, Lena, and thank you for the speakers. I really appreciated the input of a member of the Parliament, Mr. Scholz, from a very German perspective. And first of all, I would like to convey the greetings of all the members of CROCEU. And the future of Europe has always been part and parcel of what the care of the Orthodox Church is about, the better future, a future where the environment will take its rightful place, not as a piece of material to use, but rather as part and parcel of what God has given us. Education that will provide opportunity to the younger generations to grow up and work and offer their own self as our forefathers did. I have to admit, as a person, I work in the European schools, so I have a very soft spot for the education part. What really bothers me, though, is that we are trying, in a way, to create and to even broaden the gap between generations. I've been hearing tonight this focalization, this at some point obsession with the youth, and we are asking ourselves, why do people do not have trust in the European system? I will remind you all, a few years ago there was this program of sign this petition, do this, and the European Commission will take it into consideration. And yes, no. So it's just an example on a topic that was close to the heart of the churches, Orthodox, Anglican, Protestant churches, Roman Catholic churches. And finally there has been proof so many times, which is something very sad to say for those who don't know. It works as proof that, you know, it's all about voting, it's all about making sure that your representatives will enter into the different institutions, and then thank you very much, it's over now. I do not believe that, the Orthodox Church does not believe that. That's why from the very the lowest level up to the highest possible level, we advocate for the trust towards the European family, and I don't like to refer to it as the European institutions. I don't really like to refer to it as those for the Parliament, those of the Commission, those of the Council. No, it's the European family. That's what you represent for us. That's what we tell our faithful, that we have to have hope in the family. And in every family there's always strife. Between brothers, we never agree. Between cousins, between husbands and wives, and I know we're running late. It's not my fault. Don't keep looking at me like that. So It's just the fact that maybe it's also our fault that we try to wedge apart the generations. Yes, of course the youth have a role. I remember I participated in 2004 in the Porto Alegre, 2005, Porto Alegre conference of it was the World Council of Churches. And I was considered as a youth then. I was already in my 30s. And I was like, okay, so let's hear. And it was really clear how some ideas were not in contact with reality. And it's good. It's good to dream, because once you dream, you can actually get someplace. But if we keep wedging this difference, bring the youth in, of course, if you go today, if you walk out in Brussels and you ask, out of 10 people, how many know about the Conference for the Future of Europe? Belgian people, not people who work for the Institute, or even those. I'll take the risk and ask even those. Do you know how many will answer yes? Do you know how many in our societies know about it? So it is a challenging issue for me. For me, the only way is to continue doing what we do, to inform, to talk to our faithful. I mean, in Lille, we set up our own little KEK version, and we have arranged already 3 times a visit from the different churches to come to the European Parliament, come to the Commission, hear about it, learn about it, so that they can transfer it then to their faithful in the different churches. Anglican, old Catholics, Roman Catholics, Protestants, evangelicals, just to have the opportunity to share, to hear, to learn. And for me, that is the biggest challenge. Yes, we have all these things on the agenda to tick. Yes, we all care about the environment. Don't forget, our ecumenical patriarch is not called the Green Patriarch by chance. We all care about the youth, of course. We all care about the social aspects and security and all that, and health, especially in the light of what we go through with the pandemic. But let's keep it as a family. Let's keep our members close. Let's not divide, because we will not be able to reach very far if we keep dividing. I don't want to keep any longer the floor, because it is late, and her smile is just, her smile. Thank you.
Yes. And now I would invite, thank you, Father Emilius,
You're welcome.
Marie-Laure de Noël from the World Youth Alliance to take a seat up here. You have been following the YouTube discussions. Could you tell us a bit more what have the participants been talking about, and do you have some very brief questions for our speakers?
Thank you so much for giving the floor to me. So I am Marie-Laure de Noël. I am a 25 years old Belgian, and yes, I work for the World Youth Alliance as the Regional Director of Advocacy, but here I am speaking as a young person of faith and a young citizen who want to be active and enter in the political debate. So there were some questions in the chat. I will resume it briefly here in 2 questions. But first, as a small introduction to those questions, I would like to take a timeline. We spoke about the past, the cultural heritage. We spoke about the present, where we are in a period of transition, of change, of renewal. And then we spoke, of course, this is the target of the goal of our evening, to speak about the future and our hope for the future. So when I look back in the past, I see that we have this very strong heritage, and there was something very anchored, there was something stable and grounded, and this is translated in the Article 2 of the Treaty of the European Union. And those values have been mentioned: human dignity, solidarity, democracy, freedom. And I see now that it's good. The transition is good in many ways: the just transition, the social transition, the protection of the environment, the digital transition. There are so many good things, but I feel like we have come from something where we had a shared vision of the society of Europe in particular. And now we want to renew everything, and we go a little bit too far, in my opinion, in this renewal, and we come from unity and we go to division.
I'm sorry, but we would need the questions in order to have time for a round. Thank you.
So, yes, I do have hope for the future, and I have faith that we will have shared projects and common values still. But my first question is, like, today, what are our common values? What are our shared hopes? What are our common projects in the European Union? And how can we ensure that we have those shared projects? I see that there are many good initiatives. There is, for example, currently the youth resolution. Of course, you would like to listen to the young people and so on. But I also heard that there are some committees, for example, the INCHE committee in the European Parliament, who are speaking about the foreign interference in the democratic processes of the EU and disinformation. And I am scared that that kind of reports are actually silencing, I don't know if this word exists, but making us silent. And you don't want to listen to civil society if we are Catholic inspired, for example, or if we are more conservative. So, first question, is there still a shared hope? And second question, how can we better enter the debate? As a young person, I realize as well that the Conference on the Future of Europe is great, and I try to inform people the more that I can about it. But I mean, I am very small, and at my own scale, I cannot do many things. So all of these were questions that I resume as well in what I say in the chat. But how can we? What are the means that are used to make this Conference on the Future of Europe known, and what can we do as young people to promote, in a way, this platform?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And we are running. We are already behind schedule. But are there any questions within the audience that you would like?
Very good.
Yes, please.
I don't know how that works.
And if you could introduce yourself and be as brief as possible. Thank you.
As brief as possible. My name is Max. My question is for Mr. Scholz. I work for the Open Dialogue Foundation that you collaborated with in the past about Moldova as well, Ukraine. And I just wanted to ask you, considering these countries as well are European and mostly Christian majority, what kind of hope can Europe offer to our neighbors right now? In such a difficult moment for Belarus, in such a difficult moment for Ukraine as well, what's the hope that we can do, that we can offer as Christians and as Europeans to our neighbors in this moment of distress? Thank you very much.
Would you like to give a very, very brief?
Complicated question to answer in only a few sentences. So what I can deliver as answer to hopes of Christians in the Eastern neighborhood, if I understand the question well. So what we can contribute as Parliament. First of all, we can assure that we are trying to develop a policy which is giving the citizens in your countries, by the support from the European Union in various forms, the chance to determine your own fate in the future. So to give you the chance, through connecting between the political responsible structures on that issue, Commission, Council, Member States, Parliament, to discuss with their partners in Moldova, in Ukraine, Georgia, etc., about what is the task. My personal view on that is that the transition period in these countries is not yet finished. So if we are looking into the decision-making powers in these countries, then they are also determined by very different interests or angles of interest in determining the future development in these countries. So the question is the European Union Commission, DG Trade, if I'm speaking about trade policy, the External Action Service, serious to take the problems of the countries honestly and not from a point of view, what does it serve for my European Union's interest? So and that is a question which is depending on the political majorities, determining either at the member state level what the governments in the council will persuade, what is the power, the balance of power in the European Parliament with different political groups, with different political interests in shaping the relationship towards these countries. So it's the complexity. So therefore, I would finally say to you, trust into yourself. Take your voice to determine the reality in your countries and reach out to us if you are not listened in Ukraine, in Moldova, by the authorities there. And that gives us the strength to go to these partners at the governmental level to say, listen, Christians in your country have turned to us, and please, here we have to find a solution. So that, I would say, is an interactive relationship between the citizens, or the Christians in particular, in these countries, and the ability of the European Union to be a partner for turning and solving the problems.
Thank you so much. And the other questions are so huge, and I think they concern all of us. Shared values, defining values, thinking about how youth can be involved, but also thinking about how we as churches and how our members can be involved in the Conference on the Future of Europe, and how we all can contribute to making it more known and contributing to its success. I think we need to stop here and go on with these questions, and please be in touch with us at COMECE and CEC. This will be very valuable for our future deliberations.
Sorry for interrupting, because this question of yours was very important. What the youth is really expecting.
Yes, we will.
So that maybe be continuing together to answer this question. And your question was also to the youth, to my dreams of young. I was in a country which doesn't exist anymore. So it was just the German Democratic Republic, East Germany, and so we haven't dreamed to be in the European Union. So it's totally different, but maybe we have the chance to discuss in a bilateral way the issue. But what I want to ask you, knock on the door.
Ask and thou shalt be given.
And that's why I said already, don't believe anything what they are telling you as politicians. You have to insist to get concrete answers. And you have to insist on that. So I was a rapporteur for an initiative report of the Constitutional Affairs Committee in the European Parliament about citizens' dialogue and increase the role of citizens in the decision-making processes. So look in this report, it's a starting point. We have to continue the work on that, because I'm convinced that the combination between representative and participatory democracy could be a good key for opening the door into the future of Europe. And that depends then on the young people to take the key, to open the door, and to go through this door.
Thank you so much. I think we do need to go on. We can continue the discussions, but for our online followers, we need to unfortunately to close the discussion. I will now hand over to Father Luciano Larivera, Secretary for European Affairs at the Jesuit European Social Center, to very briefly reflect what you have been hearing throughout the discussions.
3 final remarks. The first one is that a great sign of hope for the Conference of Europe would be that every school in every class of every school in Europe could send a contribution, but also every parish church, every group or religious group, but every family could send a contribution. It's only 1,500 characters, spaces included. It would be a great science of hope, and we are asked to be able to mobilize people to do this. The second thing is to reflect that hope is something particular. Hope has a strict meaning. The true meaning of hope is connected to art projects that that ask a lot of strength, a lot of faith, a lot of suffering. And so we use the term hope for many things, of course, useful. But when we talk about hope, we know that hope is hope to an eternal life. So we don't think about this kind of hope, but something similar. Hope is connected to something for which I can spend my life. I can suffer. I can ask people to suffer with me. And so we know that hope is the last to die because it's connected to life, to what is important for me. And if I stop to hope, it means that I don't love my life and don't love life. But hope is also the first, is the last to die, but also the first to get sick. Because hope is always on the front. And we have to realize that there are a lot of ones that hope can receive, and we have to take care that if our hope is fragile, it's not because it's not a right hope, it's not true hope, but because in that moment that I feel that my hope is very fragile, in the moment which I have to decide again that I have to spend more about his hope. And then when we feel that the hope is fragile, we are asked to invest more, to understand what is tasked for us, what is the real cost. And so that is hope. And I want also to finish with a third final remarks that the testimony of a man of hope, that is Monsignor Aldo Giordano, the nuncio who died last week. And he was sick. I asked him to give a speech for a group, Passion for Europe, and he wanted to give this speech. He was ill. He gave this recorded speech, and I want to read this only the final remarks because I think it is important for us. Today, the demand for a Europe of defense is becoming strong, but the horizon of defense is peace. When we talk about defense, I would always expect an explicit reference to peace, to Europe's responsibility not only to defend itself and its values, but to promote peace in the world. If Europe aimed to be a peacemaker in the world, it would recover the vocation inscribed in its root, and the soul and ideal of which the venerable Robert Schuman spoke. Together, it would arouse a special interest in the world of young people who today are all seeking to recover the cause of the Union. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My friend, Father Manuel, will have the last word. I will have the last but one word. What have we learned tonight? I think I've learned that the conference on the future of Europe is complicated. I mean, just the fact that it's called a conference, which it isn't, something I struggled with in my daily life, being the General Secretary of the Conference of European Churches, which is it's not a conference. You could say that what I'm the General Secretary of is that the conversation of European churches, that was brought up here as well. That's what the Conference of the Future of Europe is, a conversation between us. I think in the future, maybe sometimes I would say that I'm the General Secretary of the conversation of European churches, being in conversation about our heritage, which we cherish, which we are proud of. Thank you. But not only the heritage, but also the future, when we have our conversations. what we do is really not only talking about baptism in the 15th century, but also about Europe of tomorrow, the future of Europe. I think the churches have something to share with the rest of the world, with Europe and the future. So that would be what I have learned tonight. What have you learned tonight, Father Manuel?
Well, many things, but I'm not going to summarize them. So, just last words, as Jürgen said, I think it's, we all share this. Thanks to all that you've come here, you've helped, the people that collaborated for this event. Thanks to Father Christian of the chapel, thanks to Jürgen and Kek. And we've tried to make this event to think about the conference on the future of Europe, but I think a bit more, to think about what are our hopes for Europe, what is our dream for Europe. So in COMECE, in Kek, we'll continue working on this. We'll continue trying to make the voices of the churches heard in the conference on the future of Europe, and try to contribute. We heard tonight, maybe the only summary I'll make is that it is also our task to work for the future of Europe. And this we'll try to do as COMECE, as Kek, as the Chapel of Europe. And I'm very pleased of having co-organized this event together. So thank you to all of you. Thank you very much.
You will get a small gift.
You don't need to do that. That's great, right?
Your shoes, you're a sweat.